Okay, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Welcome to you, whoever you are. Are you new? Nice to meet you. Everyone else, what's up? How's it going? I am coming to you from Northgard, Virginia. Longtime listeners know I make trips here a couple times a year to be with my in-laws. And I am on the porch. I'm outside, which is not something I normally do. I would normally avoid recording an intro and outro outside because, I don't know, sound is usually not that good. A lot of unpredictable things can happen, and in this instance, I'm just seizing a moment here, and I'm seeing if I can get away with this. And I might be interrupted. I mean, this porch it's like a common open living space. People walk through it all the time, so it's the exact opposite of what I would normally be looking for as a space to record in. But very few people are home. Most people are out. There are few people inside. And honestly, this porch and sitting here is really where I've spent the most of my time this week. And maybe I could paint a picture for you. This is a sprawling view I'm looking out at. Rolling grass hills with lush forests and mountain ranges. Wide open sky. I've been doing a lot of cloud gazing. Today, we have a layer of coverage. But the sun's out. It's not too hot. And, it's been a real mixed bag yet again. I've been saying that for the last few weeks, that my life feels like a mixed bag, and that continues to be the case. Some good things and some not so good things. More than anything, I'm just doing my best to let go of ideas of how things are supposed to be. I have these ideas, and then when things aren't happening according to them, feels like something's wrong. But in actuality, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to assume that things are supposed to be a certain way, In fact, they are however they are. And I know I'm being very cryptic here because, honestly, I don't really want to get into the details. And as I said, I'm sitting in a very public, open space right now, so I'm being a bit careful, I think. Which is not a bad thing. It is amazing how, when you put yourself in an environment that is less intervened upon, like more raw nature, and your mind is allowed to spread out. It's a very specific feeling. I'm hoping to try to bring it a little bit with me into this moment with you. I don't know how possible it is via audio recording, but oh, wow. Well, the spaciousness of this environment is not so good for podcast intros, I'm discovering. Normally I'd be trying to quick and terse and, come at you and say something funny, but I'm feeling very spacious. And as I said, I don't think that's a bad thing. Heading home in a few days, and we'll be back to our more usual surroundings and routines. Well, onwards and forwards, right? Onwards and forwards. And no one knows that better than my guest today, Blake Tedder. Blake and I have been in contact for months since I had Angela Farmer and Victor Van Kooten on the podcast a little while back. If you remember, in the process of getting in touch with Angela and Victor and getting them to come on the show, I discovered Blake, who recorded some podcasts with Angela Victor as a student of theirs, and his story and his experience of practicing and how that's evolved very much spoke to me, and I think a lot of people who listen to this show. And it was great to finally get a chance to connect with him. And it's a wonderful conversation. I'm very happy to share it with you today. Real quick before we do that, I always want to take a moment to express gratitude to our podcast premium subscribers, because it is an integral part of keeping this show going. Today, I want to thank Valerie Midget and Leslie Carson. Wait a second. Valerie, I think I just emailed Valerie like yesterday or the day before. Yes, I did. What's up, Valerie? Valerie sent me a very thoughtful email. It was really helpful. Thank you so much, Valerie, for being a podcast premium supporter and for that email. And I think I might have exchanged emails with Leslie Carson too. I love that. I love that when these names of podcast premium supporters come up for me to shout out. A lot of times they're people's names I recognize because I've actually had contact with them directly. And it means a lot. If you're new to the show, you're not aware, the most recent 52 episodes of this show are part of our public feed, but we also have a podcast premium subscription where you can access the full archives and also just support the show. It's choose your rate, cancel anytime. And if you don't have any money and you want to listen to the old episodes, because there's a lot of great stuff in there, you can just email us and we will give you a free account, no questions asked. But if you have a little something to give, it makes a huge difference, and we're very grateful to those people. So thanks to Valerie, to Leslie, and to everyone else who's supporting the show. If you want to learn more about how you can become a podcast premium subscriber, along with all of the other stuff I do, my ongoing live stream classes, my on-demand videos, I got a 12-hour workshop, Gentle is the New Advanced. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. All right, y'all. I do think I will keep this brief because, like I said, we are in an unpredictable space and moment. But when are we not in an unpredictable space and moment? I will touch base with you on the other side. But for now, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Blake Tedder. Hello?
Hey, Jay. I was on mute. I think I could get this by now.
Hi, Blake. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I am okay. It's nice to meet you. I mean, we've never met before, but we've exchanged some emails, and I appreciate you making this time for us to talk. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks. And it'll be great to talk to you, too. I consider you a brother that I've never met. So,
oh, cool. Well, I got a sense of that, too, from some of the things that you've written and just those podcasts that you did with Angela and Victor. I was like, oh, I felt some common thread and kindred spirit there, too. So I'm glad you feel that way also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm already recording and I'd like to consider us having begun. So I hope that's okay with you.
It is what it is. Let's go.
Okay, good. Because if I don't mention that and then people say things that they don't want other people to hear, I got to go back and try to edit stuff, and I don't want to do that. So just so you know,
man,
we're live, okay? We're live.
Keep your side job sustainable.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I guess this is a kind of a side job in a way in terms of like money, but it's a passion art thing too. But yes, you're right. Keeping it sustainable means that it's not taking up so many hours in your life, and that means like trying to cut down on production time and stuff, you know. So you understand clearly.
I do, bud. And you know, Angela and Victor conversations with me on my podcast they're called explorations, partly because that's what Angela and Victor like to do, is really explore, and I do too. But they're also called explorations because I don't want to edit, and so it's expectation management. That when you get one of our podcasts, we are freewheeling, and it may be unedited. So.
Well, I do very little editing for this show. I mean, sometimes like if there's big glitches or like or something, you can take some down and make things a little cleaner. I will do that from time to time, but most of the time they're totally unedited.
There's a big for you right there.
Yeah, big there. I'm leaving that one in for sure. Well, but you know what's funny? Like when I tried to get Angela and Victor on this show for a while, and they never heard anything from them. And then finally, at some point, I found like a different email address to try. And I got an email back from Victor, and it was so funny. Like it was kind of like a yes and kind of not like a yes. And in it, he basically said, "We really like the talks we did with Blake." Like they kind of were, I think they had some concerns of what it was going to be like to talk to me, or what kind of interview it was going to be. And they were hoping it was going to be more like something that you did with them, which it was. I don't know if you listened to the talk I had with them.
I did. I loved it.
I was very happy to be freewheeling with them, and they were wonderful. So in any case, they think highly of you. And those talks are really great. And for anybody listening who listened to the Angela and Victor talk with me, if you want some more extensive conversations with them, then you should go listen to Blake's show with them. And I'll certainly link to it so people can find it easy.
Yeah, great. You know, I just absolutely adore Angela and Victor. And from the outside, they can seem like some elusive creatures that live far away on some island in the Mediterranean. It turns out they are. They do live in Greece, and they're hard to get in touch with. But once you build rapport with them as students, I mean, they're the most generous, loving, giving people. And you know, I've only known them since 2009 when I really was beginning my yoga teaching. They came to visit our area. A lovely person named Molly Drake would bring them here to Central North Carolina. And I mean, immediately knew that these two had something deep to share with me that I needed to hear. And we can certainly get into that. But it was also immediately like I was part of their family. They feel like, you know, elders. They feel like they're grandparents to me. I just cherish that relationship. And that whole podcast, Jay, started out with me reaching out to Victor sometime during the start of the pandemic in 2020. And I said, you know, I've got so many questions about my yoga practice right now and where it's going. And really they were the deep questions on where to go next, not poses, but how to go deeper inside. And I was like, I don't know who to really talk to. We weren't going to classes at that time. And I stopped kind of really liking classes. And I just thought, I wonder if I could reach out to Angela and Victor. You know, I hadn't talked to them in over 3 years, and we hadn't talked very deeply. And sure enough, I found that Victor had a website, and you know, I contacted him via his email address. And we struck up a conversation. He answered a lot of my questions. And then I thought, gosh, I think more people need to hear this. I think people need to hear this wisdom, and they're not ones for self-promotion. So I just asked Victor if, you know, could I record a podcast where we talked about this? And thankfully, they were really open to it because I've been one of their students, and I sort of share the same ground that they do, and I go underground in the way that they do. And so it's been this lovely project, and it's not very regular. So if you're a subscriber, I'm sorry I haven't put out one in a while, but it's a really fulfilling project when I get to do it, and I hope people enjoy it. But I'll say the last thing is that I love to go back and listen to episodes because I hear all sorts of stuff that I didn't hear the first time, or I hear wisdom coming out of my mouth that I have lost temporarily, you know, for some reason or another. So yeah, it's been so fulfilling, and just kind of a dream to get to talk to two of my yoga heroes on a regular basis.
I mean, I completely understand, having this show, it's the same deal. And what I appreciated about your talks with them is that you came with a level of curiosity and like personal investment in the conversation that made it feel not like just an interview, but like an actual like connection and stuff. And that's always what I'm looking for in these conversations, is to try to bring that kind of curiosity and have that kind of inquiry with people, because that's where things feel exciting and vibrant and stuff. So, and they're just like you said, like they are kind of fountains of wisdom. And I really think, and you seem to recognize this too, that they are, I think I might have said this when I talked to them, kind of like canaries in the coal mines. Like they were sort of exploring some things before everyone else is, that now a lot of people are starting to explore.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to recognize that Angela and Victor are on the forefront of the explorations of yoga in the West, at least, and they're not really known for it, and I don't know that they want to be, but just Angela
That's true.
inventing the yoga mat out of some architectural. I don't know what the stuff is. It was
PVC material back in the day. That blue, light blue. They were all light blue.
But and it came out of a construction site or something. I don't remember the story, but she saw this stuff and said, "Hey, that has a good feeling to it." So, I mean, really pushing the edge. But I'll tell you, for everyone who practices out there that listens to your call, it's like pushing the edge of anything, of exploring anything, is really just about being truer and more sincere with yourself, because the deeper you go, the more that you are led into situations that you couldn't have gotten to with your mind. So if Angela and Victor had been continuing to fight up the stream with a Yingar, not being in alignment with who they were or who they knew they were becoming and what was arising in them, to do something more natural, organic, and feminine. I don't think they would have been, breaking ground the way that they do. But they followed their inner guidance. They followed what the body is saying, which, that's the real teacher. And lo and behold, they've really just been luminaries in the field, I think. So,
well, I appreciate a lot of what you said, and I want to talk with you today about some of what I think you're pointing to when you talk about the kind of explorations that they do and why they are sort of at the forefront of something. I don't know if it's at the forefront of all yoga in the West or modern yoga, but it's certainly at the forefront for a lot of people.
Forefront for me.
It is for me, because it does require, and you said it, it's like, it's not about mind at a certain point, or even about doing. It's like some other kind of listening. So I want to get there with you, but I kind of first want to go back, because you also talked about, I don't know, like in these deeper layers, it has to do with a certain kind of honesty and, I don't know, you coming to grips with who you are.
Absolutely.
And frankly, you mentioned that you, in 2009 is when you first met Angela and Victor, and you said that's when you started teaching, but that isn't when you started practicing yoga, is it?
No, I started maybe 2 years before that, just when I got out of college. I got out of college in 2007, and let me bring you along on a little bit of a story that
I was gonna ask, because I learned that you have quite a history leading up to your yoga that I didn't know about until like the last few days getting ready to talk to you. I think that's where you were going to go. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah. It's intricately intertwined with who I am and why I do yoga. And we talk about it a lot on the podcast with Angela and Victor, because that's my genuine inquiry to some teachers that can give me some great insight. But in 2001, when I was 16 years old, I was in a plane crash in the mountains of Colorado with my father in the summer, a 4-seater plane. 2 of us were in it. It went down. It's a really long and miraculous story, but the plane caught on fire. We ran down a mountain, got into ambulances, and I woke up 3 months or a month and a half later in the Burn Center in here at Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And through a year of physical and occupational therapy and through, a long process of coming to terms with looking different and having a different appearance in the world, from scars on my face, hands, arms, and legs. I was burned 35% of my body. And then, and also dealing with the experience of a death process very early in life and being on the other side for a little while. All of those things, eventually, there's a lot of story in between. There's a whole, I wanted to be a musician for a while, but it eventually led me to the practices of yoga. I mean, of course, my entry was like at a gym, like other people, and I thought it was going to be like some martial art. But what I found is that it was becoming to be a way for me to recognize and square with this, what I now know as trauma that was in my body, and to develop the experience of coming home. And it was I had never ever felt that in my entire life, from, all the way from the beginning, and then especially after the plane crash. So we can get into any of that, but essentially that led me to immediately go, I got to study this as deeply as possible. I went into a 9-month teacher training where I didn't have any other job, because I've thankfully been blessed at that point in my life to do that. And I studied yoga every single day and every hour of every day. I just drank it completely.
Well, wait, let me stop you for a second, because I am curious. You said that the crash happened when you were 16, and then you went to college. Was there, like, how quickly were you able to go back to school? Like, you were out for 3 months, you said, and then what was the recovery process like before you got to yoga?
So I certainly speak on this around the country when I'm asked to speak about my experience. So if anyone wants to go into greater detail about all of that, they can go to my website. But I'll certainly give you as much background as you want, which is, I was in a coma for a month and a half, a medically induced coma. I had 12 surgeries in the hospital. I eventually had 3 outside of the hospital. Skin graft surgeries where they're taking skin from one place and putting it somewhere else. Very, very painful, to the extent that they just knock you out for months at a time because it's just too painful. But of course, as we know, thank you, Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score, right? So that has been something, the trauma that I gained from all that, I still work with. But I was in the hospital in a medically induced coma for a month and a half, and then a month and a half as an inpatient, where I was doing every type of therapy that they had there: recreational therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, relearning how to walk because all my muscles had atrophied in that time, relearning how to do basic tasks like wiping my butt or eating. I mean, it's just stuff you never think about. And so it really brought me back to being feeling like an infant again. And then I went back to school immediately after leaving the hospital. And thankfully I had a school full of really accepting people. Not a lot of people do. I look very different, but that was such a blessing. And then every day after school for a year, I would drive to the hospital to go get PT in my little small town. So I did intensive physical therapy for a year. And I'll tell you, I haven't thought about this a lot, but just being around physical therapists and occupational therapists for so long, hours on end, where they're crunching and trying to get my hands to go into a fist or moving my arm in a certain way, you just learn a lot about anatomy. And you learn medical terms and all of this stuff. And it's like,
hey, when you have to retrain yourself how to walk, you probably have to learn quite a bit about your own anatomy.
Well, and you just hear their jargon. After a while, they just, you're with them so long, they just start, all of them is there. They're friends talking in the office around you. So you just learn all that stuff. So I think that was also a really interesting entry point into yoga too. I just done so much physical therapy stuff. And I think yoga really helped me recognize that, okay, I could do it. I could be in the driver's seat of that healing rather than having someone else, bend my arm or bend my hands in a certain way. So I think that was a part of an empowerment process for me to really take ownership of that. So that was crucial. So that was after going to college. No yoga until plane crash of 2001, no yoga until 2007. And that's when I really started.
And you said it was at the gym. Were you just like going to the gym to work out and they had a yoga class and you thought you would
Hell
try
yeah,
it?
I was going to the gym to work out. Hell yeah, I was getting strong.
I wasn't trying to say it in any kind of derogatory way. I was saying, how did you discover a class? There was one there and you thought, oh, I'll try it. Someone say you should try this.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was just doing that voice because that was the kind of mode that I was in at the time. Like, yeah, I'm going to get strong, listen to some good rap music, and really get whatever. And the way it happened, I can't explain. And this is how life really works when you're in the flow. And I'd never been in the flow that I was aware of, but now I look back and I really was. I just saw the writing on the wall of the class was there, and it was a guy named T, and T became my yoga teacher, T.I. I was curious about that name. It was a strange name, and ended up his name is T Harmony, and he's he's the yoga teacher in our area who's been doing it the longest, and is I'm so indebted to him. He was my teacher trainer, and he was this incredibly wise person that was doing deep yoga based in the Kripalu tradition and the Phoenix Rising yoga therapy. And yet he was like teaching at a gym. And I come to find out that T was basically kind of like a missionary in there. There were people that sort of, they were happy to get their gym workout, but he turned so many people on in our community to the deep practices of yoga in his gym class. And I'll always
be secret agent, a secret covert agent. That's what he was.
Totally. I mean, I have a call I'm in a study group with him tomorrow on the Upanishads, and he was doing that kind of inquiry back then. And he had a secret, he had a kirtan after that he would invite people to, and he would be so sly in how he told people, because it's a gym, he would be like, we do this sort of little chanting thing. If you're ever interested in this thing, it's, kind of not a big deal. And he's been doing it like every week for 20 years or something. It's absolutely
sliding
incredible.
In the chanting at the gym.
Totally.
I've done it. It's an art. It's an art, and some gyms are open to it more than others. I guess if it's a smaller town, maybe you can get away with more. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. But him being there changed my life. So I think any yoga teachers that are out there that are thinking about, is this studio a good one that I'm a part of? Is this like class system at this place good for me to work in? It's like, definitely consider that on your own terms, but also think about how you can reach people, how you can touch people just by your presence or just by the little things that you slip in there. I mean, totally changed my life. And I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah. Just an idea here or there. You're like, that my teacher said that today, and it's still in your brain. I know what you mean. The little seeds get planted or whatever, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So I think you were talking or something I read, I think that you wrote about, you had like one of those like Shavasana moments where you were hooked, where you had
Absolutely.
One of those. I've heard that story before, and what was it? What was it in that moment when you look back on it that you think I know what it is, but how do you say it in your words? If you were going to tell somebody who didn't know yoga and they're like, why are you so into yoga? And you had to tell them about that moment in Shavasana, what would you tell them it was?
Yeah. So Jay, let me paint the picture for you. So I'm this room that the yoga is in has a little bitty stage. It's got mirrors all around. You can hear the mid 2000s dance music pumping in the other room, the cardio machines you can see through the window, and it's nighttime. So it's dark outside. So, it's after a yoga class, all the mirrors that surround the room are fogged up, of course, because we've been sweating and breathing in the same space. There's like 40 people in the class. It's just a giant yoga class for our area and for a gym. And, we get, especially after, I think he ended with some pigeon poses or something like that. And those I've found out are like the key to unlocking some of my systems. So I'm shaking coming out of those poses, and my body's just starting to have that shake, which I now recognize as a releasing action. But at the time, I didn't know, it was very uncomfortable. And I'm laying on my back, and I feel this like depth within the shaking that's like underneath the shaking. And it's like the shaking's happening. My body's clearly doing it. Then there's something else, and I'm underneath that. And that was the first time I recognized a separation between body and self. And so I'm feeling this feeling of, okay, well, the body's just happening up here. I'm not like worried about it. I have been worried about it, shaking, the trauma, all of that. And as I related to that feeling of depth and warmth that I was feeling, I started to just have this feeling of the only thing I can call it is homecoming, which is also like an all rightness in the world, like everything is okay.
Yes, I call it okayness. You call it all rightness.
Yeah. And it was also showed me, whenever you feel that feeling, which is, God bless it, is just a feeling we all need all the time, or at least some of the time. Yeah. But when you feel that, you feel the contrast of that too, because you feel I'm feeling this and this warmth and this depth and this feeling of home and myself. And that is markedly different than how I was feeling like an hour ago. So that contrast, I think, was the biggest thing. Opening that world of that feeling was so big, but also recognizing, oh, there might be a problem in my system if I've never felt this good, warm feeling, and my normal feeling is completely anxious and worried about the world. So it gave me a real sense of like, oh, I've got work here. And so this tool, yoga, did it. I want to know everything about it. And that's the way I kind of explore stuff, just full tilt.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get that other experience and the contrast as you described. I remember, I think it was Amber Carnes, she was on the show, and she described it as like she was driving home from her first yoga class and the anxiety thought spiral came back on. Mm-hmm. And then she realized it had been off for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And the contrast of like, oh, wow, that's what it's like to not have my mind spiraling like that.
Bless it. Oh.
Yes. And then you're like, okay, how do I do that again?
Right. Right. And also like, wow, I'm being more genuine in my interactions. I'm like,
you're available, you're able to.
Yeah. I'm actually hearing what this person's saying. I'm actually like feeling something in this conversation. And it showed me that, one of the ways that I coped with going through what I went through, a plane crash and all the hospitalizations and surgeries, is dissociation. And that has been the battle of my life is squaring with, not feeling real, to, being so disassociated from my body that no experience feels real. And that's really hard to explain to people that have never experienced it. But it's that it lacks so much depth of feeling that it is like life is like an abstraction. You're looking at it in a third person and you're not feeling it. And that was a large part of my life for a long time, and still is on occasion when I get sort of twisted up again. But now, thankfully, I've got tools that I've built over these whatever years now to just kind of keep that at bay.
So I'm curious, at that time, what was the sort of practice that T was doing with you?
So T's approach in the gym, and I totally recommend people go to his website. I think it's godeep.yoga. I can't explain enough how this person.
I will definitely be reaching out to him. I'd love to talk to him. He seems like
gosh, please talk to him.
He's doing calls on Upanishads. I definitely want to talk to that
guy. He's one of the dearest people in the world to me. His whole family, and he can go very deep. That's why he calls his training go deep yoga teacher training. So in that gym, he was really doing it was a flow-based class, but I remember kind of a macho guy who was a friend of mine at the time who got really hard into yoga. He would say, "God, I can't go to T's classes. He holds his poses way too long," and it was like he was holding them for 30 seconds to a minute. Sometimes you'd be in a warrior pose. And, I came to find out, T was my introduction to Angela and Victor because he loved Angela and Victor. And he was asking us to explore all the time. So we'd be going through some sort of, sun salutation variation with twists here and there and whatever. And then he'd stop us and just say, be in it, like feel it. What is changing? And he would use the Kripalu acronym: breathe, relax, feel, watch, allow, which I always love. Breathe, try to relax something, even if it's your toes or whatever. When you relax one thing, all the other things kind of fall into place. Breathe, relax, feel, like make an effort to like approach something and try to feel it. And if you can't feel it, back up a little bit and, back up from that edge. He was also a very big Eric Schiffman follower. And so I am too, but he would say, back up from that edge and then try to feel more deeply. So breathe, relax, feel, watch, and then watch it. Try to be a little, observer in the action, trying not to identify so much, and then like allow it to be however it is. And he was teaching that in the gym scenario, and it was fantastic. So lucky.
You lucked out, Blake. You lucked out because
absolutely
those influences, Eric Schiffman and Angela and Victor, and even just that way of working, even at that time. I started a center. You said 2007? Is that when you were doing that? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was 2007, 2008.
Yeah, I opened my yoga center in Brooklyn in 2007. Now, by that time, I was already doing like a slow flow therapeutic orientation thing. So I had shifted, but it was still predominant to be doing to not have someone having you breathe, release, feel, and watch in that way. You know what I mean? To even take those moments to slip that kind of idea in there. And that's why those your friends were like, "Oh, I can't take that class. He's making us hold it too long." It probably wasn't even that slow. It's just compared to the other power classes.
It wasn't. 100%. There was a kind of Baron Baptiste focused studio in our area, and that guy would go over there and just be pumping it out and sweating, and he would just be hollering when he left.
Fast and furious.
And it helped me at that time recognize what was helpful. Like those classes, I felt good, but I didn't feel necessarily like I was coming home. I felt my nervous system more activated in those classes, and whatever T was doing, the combination of poses and things and time and whatever, I found that some switch is getting flipped in me at some point. I don't know when it is, but something's getting switched where the loop that I was in reverses, and it's like the parasympathetic system turns on. Like I could really feel that in those classes, and they were like $15. So, I was a member of the gym, so it was free for me. So, and it was $15 for someone else. So I had a free access to this great teacher, and really grateful.
I'm intrigued by what you just said, like that switch flipping, and in relationship to you talking about the dissociation. Like I know that you were experiencing that from the traumas. I guess everybody. I think there's a lot of that kind of disassociation from our bodies, from one reason or another.
100%.
Even just because of the way our societies think of nature and our bodies.
You're speaking my language for sure.
And so it seems, I'm curious, what do you think that is the counter to that disassociation, at least in your experience of practice?
Well, it's embodiment. So, of course it is. And
it's doing the opposite of disassociation,
but,
right?
I'll tell you, let me tell you about where my practice is now. Because I have a full-time job now. I'm not teaching regularly. Sometimes I'll
wait. I want to get there. So so your practice wasn't always where it is now. I guess because one of the, just so you know where I'm going, I'll clue you into what I have in mind is that I'm somebody who learned like a bunch of different kinds of techniques and approaches to practice, alignment based, whatever, flow based, and then found my way to Desikachar teachings, which I know you've been inspired by too.
Yeah.
And then even still, what Angela and Victor are doing, like that kind of somatic thing of like, go into your body, like where it's not mind, it's not directing attention and breath ratios or whatever, you know?
Right.
And going to that place in my experience is a bit of a challenge. So I guess I'm curious to hear, like, from where your practice started. It wasn't always there, even though, although I guess you were working in that kind of modality already from the beginning. It sounds like he was already cluing you in to some degree.
I'm reading you here, and I just want to make sure that I'm valuing your time. So I was advancing.
No, we don't have to rush. We got time. Don't worry.
All right, so
good man. You see, you know, I appreciate that.
You do. I mean, I've been on the other side of an interview.
Yeah, nice.
So it's. I think it's worth saying that, it wasn't pure feeling of homecoming when I really started yoga. I certainly had that, but then of course my mind was very active, and it all of my usual strategies flooded into the yoga world when that was my focus, because of course it did. I was kind of a musician at the time, doing singer-songwriter stuff in town, playing in bars until 2 a.m. and that sort of thing, which went down once I started doing yoga.
By the way, me too. I was a bass player in a band when I first started teaching and practicing, and eventually having to stay up late to play for the sound guy on Wednesday nights when I had a class early in the morning just didn't make sense anymore. So I kind of let go of that.
That's so similar to me. And also my desire to be in front of an audience went down as I did more yoga. And I recognized that, I call this my singer-songwriter. I want to be a famous musician. I now call it the Blake Tedder is okay project, which coming out of what I went through, I had so much sympathy and prayers and cards and concerned faces, and I have just a lovely community where I'm from that supported me so much. And I mean, I'm so grateful to all of that, but I was in kind of a hole for myself of cushion, and of love, of concern. And I wanted to say, I'm okay. And I want to be famous. And it was also a way of proving that my insecurities weren't really there. It was actually that I was just a famous musician by nature. And so all of that went downhill when I started really getting into my body with yoga. But that went downhill, but I put all of that drive that I was doing for music into yoga. So then not only did I want to become to learn about yoga, but I wanted to become a yoga teacher. One, to share it, of course, but we all have some of these mixed emotions and mixed motivations. But I also wanted to be in front of people again. I mean, I wanted to, be an authority. I wanted to have people looking up to me and saying, gosh, you're so great. How did you figure that out or do this? And
I wanted to be good at it and advanced. And even if it wasn't about people getting praise from other people, it was more like, I just want to be really good at it or something.
Yeah. I certainly had that. I have less of wanting to be good at it. This is my particular substrate of dysfunction is I wanted less to be good at it and just to be known. I mean, that is that comes straight from my father, to be noticed, known, and be in control of how I'm perceived. Because people with facial disfigurements like I have, with scars on their faces or with other conditions, I mean, you wouldn't, if you don't know what this is like, it's hard to explain. But I mean, when you walk out in public, everyone looks at you. Everyone looks at your face and wonders, or everyone looks at your face with confusing looks or concerned looks, or, looks that say, I want to talk to you, but I don't know how. It's comparable to having a big zit in the middle of your forehead when you were, in your 20s or something, and everybody's looking at it and you're feeling that so concerned. But when it's something that happened to you, you can see the depth of people's curiosity on their faces. Like, what happened to this guy? I want to talk to him about it. I don't have words. You can see all of that mental processing that people are having. So me playing music and me, eventually getting to be a yoga teacher and authority was a lot about trying to control, how people looked at me. And it was all about my image. So that's a long way to say that the yoga I was doing was a lot of pushing and a lot of, getting into poses that I shouldn't have been doing, creating injuries that I'm dealing with now, or instabilities in my body. Doing yoga so much that I was completely out of balance, and frankly, quite manic about it for a long time. But I learned a lot in the process, and it was what it had to be. But
well, I'll stop you for a second. Let me stop you for a second, because that is why I didn't know that exactly about you, but I suspicioned it, because it's the same with me, that you're impassioned to practice. You have that moment in Shavasana. You're like, oh my God, what's that? And then you're driven. And, just like you can read all kinds of things about yoga, and there's all kinds of approaches to yoga that will encourage that kind of pushing and forcing, and ultimately kind of reaching and striving for it. And the reaching and the striving for it on a physical level had its own, as you kind of referenced, I destabilized all kinds of stuff. And nowadays I do other kinds of things to try to counter some of the stuff I did for so many years back then.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that it came from almost like a desperate place of really wanting to reside more readily in that experience that you described, that you had, and that I had, and a lot of people had, when they have those little glimmering drops of nectar that hit their third eyes in Shavasana or whatever it is. Right?
Yeah, bud, that's it. I mean, I was chasing healing for a long time, and it eventually led me into, I've dabbled in every healing modality and psychedelia that there is, just to be chasing that feeling of coming home.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of Jay Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.